So like any new findings, any new reports, any new numbers, like we are learning. This is in the learning stage. But it seems that what some doctors are saying, it like in the serological surveys in particular, the immune response of dengue can be captured as an immune response of COVID. And given that in Indian cities, dengue is such a prevalent, and large number of population would have had dengue in last in last, let's say 5 or 7 years or 10 years.
So in the last I had dengue was in 2014.
Yeah.
But let's say dengue spreads every year.
Yeah.
But even then it spreads to what, 10,000 people in a year, right?
Yeah.
So that's not much, and it's not contagious. It has to be through a mosquito. It's not person to person.
Yeah.
So let's say in the last 5, 6 or 10 years, let's say 2 lakh people have had it.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 lakh.
Yeah.
But then this finding that comes and says 45 lakh people or 46 lakh people have.
Yeah.
It cannot just be dengue, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, but then the point here that would come is, we just know it it's misidentified dengue as one thing. I mean,
true.
So then second question can be are there something else, a few other, kind of diseases that the immune response to that,
right.
take it as that. So that's number one. And secondly, in terms of, overall as well, not doing to the specific India relevant or Delhi relevant issues, the false negative in serological surveys in general, people say as higher.
It's quite high.
And so that's what. But then again, if we just still want to do deductions based on that, I would probably still come with something 15% number, right? That's again still
seems
pretty
more
large.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be very frank, anything related to this disease, my first answer always been we don't know.
Yeah.
And then given that we don't know anything, fine, let's speculate, but we're just speculating.
Yeah. And there's a lot of false correlation that comes out, spurious analysis. People saying, probably in the rainy season it'll spread less because the virus becomes weaker due to moisture. Because they studied this data from the 1918 flu, the Spanish flu in Bombay.
Yeah.
And they noticed that, it was high in summers. And then when it started raining, it went down.
Yeah.
And then it comes back in November or whenever it stops raining, in October probably.
Yeah.
So the analysis is it doesn't spread much in the rainy season. But it just could be that because it's raining, people don't go out.
Yeah.
So it spreads less.
Yes.
So the virus has nothing to do with moisture.
Absolutely.
It's just that people don't move around.
Yeah. No, yes, of course. Taking misleading causations with correlations.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I mean, to be very frank, right? Whoever got the CM's post, let's say just month before, they you could basically say that one person got COVID, right?
Exactly.
It's a correlation causation stuff. And I mean, many similar people were also saying that there was well-identified studies that in summer the flu gotten less, right, with the Spanish flu, particularly in the US and so that's why I mean, even when Donald Trump joked around that summer it is going to disappear completely. It had some few percent of some evidence base, but
probably people were just taking summer off, so it was spreading a little less. They were just going to the village or going away from big cities in the summer.
Yeah.
Because the schools closed down. So they were taking kids out. If you have to follow the old pattern, disease pattern of, or the patterns of older diseases, Spanish flu or any flu, basically in the 50s, 60s, 80s, 90s. It could just be that people move away from the cities for a while because it's schools are closing and everything, universities are off.
Yeah.
And they just take off.
Yeah.
So it spreads less in the cities where the documentation is higher.
Yeah.
And so you're reading the data as, it spreads less in the summer.
Yeah, quite well. I mean, so that's the best case estimation, right? I mean, second thing is there is a reason it's a novel virus, right? I'm ready to be agreed that the studies were perfect. None of this happened, and it was actual causation that in that particular, let's say, virus for the flu actually died during summer. But then this is it's a new virus, and by definition, limited about it, and so just don't just look at the old studies and do the extrapolation from there.
Yeah, it's weird because there's no information basically. It's come from nowhere.
Yeah,
and it's just no, people are just
and so that's people are scared, and that's why. So the two most important questions that I think people are asking around this, and what's going to be the biggest impact of this is how societies are changed. right?
Yeah.
And so the reason how societies are changed is like a lot more important. Is of course, so there are, to be very frank, right now sitting here, right? Like if people ask what are the two most important impact of this,
Right.
People will say it's economy, like loads of people, like unemployment and other things,
Right.
and then the health impact, like millions people dying,
Yeah.
right? But then to be very frank, in the longer range of the history, these are not going to be the most important impact. And so the people say that like the way society changed, right? Like during like because of this, and then this becomes the defining moment of that change, are going to be the most important. And so like the reason I'm saying that there are two direct way it will be impacted, right? One is of course technology and more prevalence of technology on human society, right? Like tracking devices, apps to track people, right? And that.
We've already seen that in China, right? They have like provinces where they're like cities where they're tracking literally everything you do.
Absolutely.
Like your face is being tracked, and like no matter where you go in the city, the government knows what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. All the time. And so with COVID, what's happening is like, it's actually becoming like open license, right? Like you're giving government right now the right to just like, track me completely, right? Mm-hmm. It's with a good intention from the government side, but then like what history tells us is like, once you give that out, it's not pretty easy that like, it never happens that like, wartime rules does not change once the war is end. So that's one way, like on the technology, and then more and more government involvement in the personal lives and technology, particularly tracking technology and like tracking particular individuals. So that's number one. Number two is this openness to accept, like, so the society changed the way that so the fearfulness also leads to need of having somebody as authoritarian, like who can give you comfort that like, I'm going to solve this problem for you, right? And so that mindset, anyway, it's like it's pretty high in the.
But don't you think that I was also of the belief that probably people will lean towards more authority. But I do have a feeling that since a lot of countries already have authoritarian leaders, it might just open people's eyes to believing that probably authority is not the best answer. Right? Like what you're seeing in the US, for example, Trump's ratings are falling. And it has much to do with coronavirus. Not like, okay, there's this Black Lives Matter protest also.
Yeah.
But mostly the mishandling of coronavirus. And now that it's affecting the economy as well.
Yeah.
So we're seeing his ratings plummet even in southern states, right?
Yeah.
So, and we've seen like Boris Johnson do a little less right-wingy thing, like little less authoritarian things.
Yeah.
So when authoritarians are in charge already and people think they are the ones who have messed it up, then probably they might have a change of, not heart, but change of belief probably.
So in terms of like voter behavior, that's quite possible. But then what I was saying is like, so because authoritarian regimes are there already, the rule changes, right? And the way they will use this rule changed, like during this pandemic.
So you're saying they'll consolidate power?
Yes. And then like changing the rules and consolidating the power, that will last much longer.
Yeah.
I mean, like US, right? Like to be very frank, I mean, again, I'm completely exaggerating everything. Like just like, let's speak hypothetically.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, so if the pandemic is there, voting doesn't happen. Right? Like, it gets really bad. Like, and so there are like some limitations with the voting, or like they don't allow postal votes and other things. Right? Like, I mean, some of these things can be very easily misused.
Plus we seem to be going for elections in Bihar as well. Like, I don't think the pandemic is going to affect elections in any way. It's going to affect the economy, but not the elections.
But then like, here very well. Like, so let's take a case of Bihar. If let's say government decide that like, the current CM, we just want to continue or something like that, or rule through the governor, it's a pretty perfect time to just say that like, it's a pandemic.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, right now they want to go voting, but then like if they just want to decide, and like
they could have said that we are delaying the elections by 6 months or whatever.
Yeah.
I think opposition parties will also agree.
Yeah.
They already made the statement, some of the opposition parties in Bihar, that they're fine with delaying elections.
Yeah.
So that would have made more sense.
Yeah.
But apparently it's not happening right now.
Absolutely. And then so my only point here is like, so there are uncertainty. Okay, and this kind of crisis opens multiple ways for authoritarian government to change rules. Right?
True, yeah.
And like some of that can be just long lasting. And so this so these are the two major points. Like when it's technology and like absolute more and more incursion of technology on daily lives.
Right.
And like going that data directly to the government. Like it's now, it's not, I mean, like, of course, like Facebook and everybody tracked me, but then at least in theory they said like we never give it data to government. Like now it's a step further. It's even more like detailed surveillance, and then data directly go to the government, or like somebody can monitor me that. Like, so one, that, and second, the kind of other authoritarian or other rule changes that governments can bring in can be long lasting.
Yeah. No government is gonna say, okay, I'm gonna have less power from now on, like less access to your data, less information about what you're doing. Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Also, the argument from the government side is that there's no other way to deal with it than by collecting more information about you, right?
Oh, yeah.
For now.
Yeah.
So they have a valid argument.
Absolutely.
But obviously the argument is about giving up. Nobody wants to give up.
Yeah.
Like we saw in when after 9/11, right? They sort of had a Patriot Act and a lot of other things. So the US government started collecting a lot of data. But when Obama came with the whole pitch of, withdrawing troops and not entering wars or whatever, even he didn't give up any, surveillance on citizens. It like Snowden, the whole case happened under Obama. So I don't think any government likes to give up.
No. So history is pretty clear on that. It's just, So one thing we definitely know is like there is enough evidence around that, like, well, once power is consolidated, like, well, nobody, like governments don't generally wants to, or rulers in general don't want to give away the power. It's
We've never met a lenient guy named Adolf, have we? No. That is yet to happen. Probably one day we will.
Well, fingers crossed.